South Africa's 350 monthly temporary grant for unemployed people will cost the fiscus 27 billion rand for the next 7 months. The Finance Minister Tito Mboweni has unpacked details of the social relief of distress grant, which was extended until the end of March 2022. Mboweni was expanding on a range of measures announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa to support the recovery of the economy and provide relief to the poor. Lumkile Mondi is senior lecturer at the Wits School of Economics, and he joins us now. Very good evening to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. It's a pleasure as always. Just please share your general views of the budget tabled earlier on.
We are very encouraged because we've asked Treasury to extend the tests which they stopped end of March. And we have seen, based on the work done by Nick Paul's team from Stellenbosch on specifically the rapid mobile surveys, where they showed that youth-headed and female-headed households were living in hunger because of a lack of income and therefore could not afford to access any food. So this announcement of the 27 billion rand relief package will go a long way in preventing hunger, but at the same time ensuring that a lot of people have got access to basic needs. However, we want a long-term plan. This is just a short-term measure because it's going to end again end of March. We would like to see a shift in the medium to long term towards a guarantee employment scheme whereby government, given our infrastructure challenges, does play a bigger role in employing some of the people than outsource some of the responsibilities, because it's only through a job where we can shift the expenditure from a grant towards productive investment.
So then let me ask this. A study earlier this year found that per capita household income and household experience of hunger significantly predicted income-related health inequalities in the COVID-19 era. So just to what you're saying then, what is the projection then for per capita household income given the warnings of further waves of COVID-19 and the current circumstances that we find ourselves? You're talking about a basic income grant. Does that then become a pipe dream?
Not really. I think a basic income grant guarantee is also a measure which I would like to see being a permanent measure. What we want is an employment guarantee, what John Maynard Keynes called full employment. We believe that under the ANC government, there's been a lot of privatization of various capabilities that rest with the local government, that rests with the provincial government and national government, and those responsibilities, which are public responsibilities, should be brought back to the state, get people back to work, so that we can guarantee opportunities and work, because it's only through full employment where people will work for the money that they get than a basic income grant, or in this case, a temporary scheme such as a grant that they're getting of 350. So that's a switch we would like the Treasury and the President to be engaged with around full employment. How do we do it? How to bring back capabilities to government and guarantee full employment as the state, as an employer of last resort.
So I'm just wondering, Treasury, for instance, through its Director General, is saying that this relief package won't result in any borrowing. But as you say, you don't want a permanent situation. And are we seeing enough risk-adjusted strategies in protecting employment? And just what we have put in place already, is it ensuring future equitable income distribution?
I'm laughing because that issue hasn't been discussed around the inequality. We are more focused on poverty relief. So this measure is a poverty relief measure. If you're looking broader around the unequal distribution of South Africa, which is one of the most unequal societies in the world, where wealth is concentrated on a few, a black and a white elite, and the majority live in poverty. That issue has not been tackled. That's why some of my colleagues are working in ways of introducing what's been suggested by Piketty around a wealth tax, how that wealth tax will work, including taxing luxuries, because we know that a number of politicians and an elite like buying branded goods, whether it's handbags, whether it's motor vehicles, and other luxuries. If we can impose more taxes there, we'll be able at least to switch their taste and their expenditure towards other much more affordable South African produced goods, which do the same thing anyway, rather than a Louis Vuitton bag. A bag is just a bag. So Mr. Price and others can produce locally and can do the same job as a Louis Vuitton. So that's a switch of attacking the wealthy that we need to investigate deeper. And then if we do that, I think over a generation, we'll be able to close the wealth inequality gap which exists in our country.
And I'm also wondering, I mean, the minister revealing the damage caused by the destruction and looting recently, saying that it has cost, let me just look at that figure again, just so that I can get it right, that it cost about 15 billion rand alone. So won't this affect service delivery and lessen the impact of these relief measures?
In fact, these are the consequences of hollowing out the state capabilities. So what we saw, the looting, is a real example of what the Zuma regime had done, just in terms of hollowing out state capabilities. So not only was ESCOM, Transnet, PRASA, and other SOEs capabilities hollowed out, including, for that matter, the National Prosecuting Authority, our security cluster, whether it's police or the army. What you saw 2 weeks ago is an example of what it means to hollow out a state. You render the whole institution ineffective, incapable, and therefore a free-for-all. So this is a good lesson for us. So I'm hoping that the 250 million that's going to the police and the additional amount of money going to the army to make them capable is not going to end up again in another people's pocket. Through procurement, which would like to bring back to the state as an employer of last resort, rather than asking private sector to do that job, because it ends up under the ANC in people's pocket, as we have seen with the PPE acquisition and many other countless number of corruption as a result of state expenditure. So that's the switch that we'd like to see, because state capacity has been rendered ineffective. Therefore, let's rebuild it. That will include employing and creating capability within the state.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Mr. Mondi, because the Labour Minister also a short while ago admitting that tax benefits weren't being passed on to workers. So these tax breaks that you mentioned earlier on, how they're supposed to benefit the groundswell in the labour sector if just the basics, as you said, in terms of state capacity is not being realised?
Well, that's the mentality, that's a shift that we want to see. The president has alluded that within his party going forward, they would like to put a minimum qualification before you become a councillor. For example, with the looming March local government election, that is a minimum of any ANC deployed to the state will be a grade 12 qualification. Whether that will take us anywhere further remains to be seen. The same should be applied to ministers, so that we employ ministers that understand the sector. So if you're talking about the Minister of Finance, let's get professionals who are members of the party, who has worked in banking, who understand finance, so that they can do the job effectively. So if we do that, it's going to be a long-term game. But if we do that, I think we'll be able to go a long way to address some of the state weaknesses and capabilities, and therefore have a developmental and capable state going forward.
All right, thank you so much for speaking to us. Lumkile Mondi is a senior lecturer at Wits School of Economics, helping us to understand the figures that were announced earlier on by the Finance Minister.